Police Practices. Tonight we're going to be looking at police pursuits in the city of San Diego. Again, my name is Gloria Tran and I'm the chair of the Commission on Police Practices. On behalf of the commission, I want to welcome you to this community hearing. Here are some statistics that from a nationwide investigation done by the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper and published just last week. Pursuits claim nearly 2 lives each day across the United States. From 2017 through 2022, police pursuits killed 3,336 people, including 551 innocent bystanders and 15 officers. And the Chronicle believes these numbers are significantly undercounted by the federal government. In addition, it appears that communities of color take the biggest hit. According to the Chronicle's data, police chases kill 4 times as many Black people per capita as white people, and Latinos die at a rate 50% higher than whites. The issue of police pursuits here in the city of San Diego was brought to our attention by a community member during non-agenda public comment at a Commission on Police Practices meeting in December 2023. The resident spoke about a crash that killed 8-year-old Malachi and 4-year-old Mason Orozco Romero on December 8, 2023. An official complaint was filed with both the police department's internal affairs unit and the Commission on Police Practices regarding the incident. The commission will not address the specific complaint at tonight's meeting. Until we get investigative powers, which will be drafted then approved by the city council, the commission is only authorized to review cases investigated by internal affairs. Therefore, the purpose of tonight's community meeting is to gather information as the first step to determine if, 1, the commission will recommend changes to the police department's pursuit policy, and 2, if the department's pursuit policy is being implemented correctly by officers. The commission invited San Diego Police to attend this meeting and present its pursuit policy. Chief David Nislight told me that department personnel could not attend on advice of counsel. Consequently, the Commission on Police Practices outside General Counsel, Mr. Dwayne Bennett, will present the San Diego Police Department's pursuit policy. Then we will hear public testimony. I turn it over to Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner, members of the public who are here. Vehicle pursuit policies for all public safety agencies in California are very, very controversial. Why are they controversial? Because there is a statute that immunizes departments that engage in vehicle pursuits, regardless of whether or not there is injury, property damage, or death. California Vehicle Code Section 17,004.7 says that departments that adopt pursuit policies that have certain requirements have immunity from liability. However, the Vehicle Code also says that adoption of a vehicle pursuit policy is discretionary. Public safety agencies do not have to engage in pursuits. Next slide, please. I don't think, next slide, there you go. All right, and commissioners, I want to say this. The presentation that I presented is detailed. I don't have time to go through all the slides in detail. Vehicle pursuits are complicated, but I want to hit the highlights of the slides for your perusal and ask you to just go ahead and look at the slides in your discretion. All right, so there is immunity under Vehicle Code Section 17,004.7. All right, next slide, please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is the section. Next slide. Here are the requirements to determine whether or not a department has immunity. The code says that where a department's policy contains these factors, they have immunity. The policy has to determine under what circumstances a pursuit can be initiated. The policy has to define a pursuit. It has to determine the total number of law enforcement officials or vehicles authorized to participate in the pursuit, communication procedures, role of supervisors. Supervisors have roles in monitoring each and every pursuit. Next slide. The policy must determine driving tactics and the circumstances under which the tactics may be appropriate. It has to determine authorized pursuit intervention tactics. It has to determine the factors to be considered by a peace officer and a supervisor in determining the speed of a pursuit, as well as the role of air support, when to terminate or discontinue a pursuit. Next slide. Determine procedures for apprehending an offender following a pursuit, and determine effective coordination, management, and control of interjurisdictional disputes. Many disputes will traverse county lines. It may go from San Diego to Chula Vista. In order to obtain or to have this immunity, there have to be provisions in a pursuit policy to determine how those pursuits are handled. Next slide. The pursuit policy, in order to grant that immunity, must also have a reporting and post-pursuit analysis performed for every vehicle pursuits. And the pursuit policy shall include, but is not limited to, a requirement that all peace officers of the public safety agency certify in writing that they have received, read, and understand the policy. It does not say that they have to follow the policy. Regular and periodic training is required, and this means that annual training on the policy is required. And I did not misspeak. The controversy behind the statute, Vehicle Code Section 17,004.7, is that a department has immunity where they have all of these prerequisites checked. The immunity applies whether or not an officer follows the policy or not. Next slide. Now, in terms of when to terminate a pursuit, the vehicle code says that certain factors are required. All right, and there has to be ongoing evaluation of risk to the public or pursuing officers. The protection of the public is paramount, given the need or reasonably suspected offense and apparent need for immediate capture against the risk of the public and peace officers. There is a balancing that is required, commissioners, in terms of when to engage in a pursuit, and when that pursuit is too risky and must be discontinued for the protection of the public. And you'll hear that theme back and forth. Another factor to consider for terminating a pursuit includes vehicular, pedestrian, traffic safety, weather conditions, traffic conditions, speeds, availability of air support, and procedures for when an offender is known. If an offender is known and you know, or the department knows they can apprehend that offender later, why engage in a pursuit? The policy must have that procedure, again, in order to obtain this immunity. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about what POST recommends, Peace Officer Standards and Training. They provide guidance and they provide guidelines to departments engaging in pursuits. And the first guideline that they provide to all departments is a guideline for when to initiate a pursuit. And they go back to what I talk about, the balance test. And they say that the balance test to be used as a guide in determining whether or not to pursue in the beginning. The balance test is an ongoing decision-making process to analyze the risk of initiating, continuing, and or terminating a pursuit. Next slide. Another guidance that they give is a guidance or a guideline regarding the speed of a pursuit. And what POST states is that pursuits can occur at any speed, but they determine or they recommend to departments that they use a standard of reasonableness in determining how fast that pursuit should go. Now, what you will hear as I talk is this general thing. There's a lot of discretion and there's a lot of judgment that goes into vehicle pursuits. All right, the department has immunity if they have these prerequisites, and I'll get to that when I talk about the department's policy, but there's a lot of discretion that goes into it, including how fast a pursuit should go. It's based upon the standard of reasonableness. Next slide. POST gives guidance as to hazards to bystanders and motorists. And it states, it is the intent of these guidelines to minimize the risk to innocent bystanders in pursuits. Hazards to uninvolved bystanders or motorists during the law enforcement effort to capture a suspect are a constant factor to consider during a pursuit. That's just part of the framework. But POST does say that departments need to be careful and recognize the hazards of these pursuits relative to bystanders and motorists. Next slide. POST provides guidance in terms of continuance of a pursuit. He says that the policy by any department should address the fact that a law enforcement pursuit is a rapidly changing event The responsibility of each authorized unit engaged in pursuit may change depending on the circumstances. So any department has to guideline or has to often and consistently go back to this guideline and determine whether or not it's in the public's interest and it's in the public safety's interest to continue pursuit. Okay, that's something that is discretionary and is a judgment call. Next slide. Post offers guidance in terms of tactics. And it says that in drafting a policy, the department has to consider driving tactics that may be appropriate during pursuit. So a department is supposed to give its officers some idea in terms of the proper tactics to be used in these high-speed pursuits. Next slide. Post offers guidance in terms of when to terminate the pursuit. And Post says a policy should describe the issues to be considered by officers and supervisors in the decision to continue or terminate the pursuit. Again, the balance test should be used as a guide in making a determination. If the risk to the public outweighs the gain or the apprehension of the subject, Post says the pursuit should terminate, or it should not have ever been initiated in the first place. Next slide. Now let's go to San Diego PD's policy. It's found, or basically it's codified under policy or procedure 1.03. In essence, the San Diego Police Department's policy does contain the requirements of Vehicle Code Section 17,004.7 and defines a pursuit as follows, and I'll quote. It defines a vehicle pursuit as an event involving one or more law enforcement officers who are operating an authorized emergency vehicle, attempting to apprehend a suspected or actual violator of the law in a motor vehicle, while the driver is using evasive tactics to avoid arrest, such as high-speed driving, driving off a roadway, turning suddenly, or driving in a legal manner, but willfully failing to yield to the officer's signal to stop with emergency lights and suddenly active. That's the policy, and that's a definition of a pursuit as required under Vehicle Code Section 17,004.7. Next slide. The policy does contain the predicate in terms of when to initiate a pursuit. And there's a lot of verbiage up there, but let me just say this, that in order for a San Diego police officer to engage in a pursuit, the officer must have probable cause to believe that the driver or occupants of the vehicle have committed an infraction or a misdemeanor in his or her presence, or have probable cause to believe a felony has been or is being created. It's interesting that the department allows for high-speed vehicle pursuits for infractions. Query as to whether or not that's okay. All departments do not have that same requirement. Some departments only allow pursuits for high-risk felony actions as opposed to infractions. This department does allow that. And the department says in initiating a pursuit, the officer should take into account the need to protect the public and balance the known or suspected offense. Again, the balancing test is there. Next slide. Here are the factors that San Diego PD says should be considered when initiating a pursuit. These factors include, and I'll just go quickly and just truncate it in a truncated manner. They include vehicular traffic patterns, location, familiarity of pursuing officers relative to the area, time of day, speed of fleeing suspect, capabilities and condition of the vehicles involved, quality of radio communications, safety of occupants, capabilities, conditions of involved personnel, weather visibility, road conditions, and whether the suspect is known and can be apprehended later. These are the factors, this is the guidance that the procedure gives to officers engaging in a high-speed pursuit. Next slide. What about participation in a dispute? The policy says that officers engaged in a pursuit have a duty to drive with due regard for the safety of all persons using the highway. Again, this is discretion, this is judgment, and it's placing the burden on the officers to drive safely. Only 2 units shall be involved actively unless supervisor agrees or decides otherwise. Next slide. What about the pursuing officer's responsibility? Prior to pursuing a vehicle at high speeds, officers, this is what the policy says, officers must evaluate the risk associated with operating the police vehicles and the fleeing vehicle at high speeds. They must consider environmental factors. They must understand and decide in this balancing factor as to whether to begin, continue, or terminate a high-speed pursuit. The assessment should include present and potential surrounding and adjacent areas that the pursuit might reach. Among examples of where this type of discretion should be exercised. It includes school zones, high pedestrian traffic areas, shopping center parking lots, public parks, street fairs, sporting events. These are some of the examples that are indicated or illustrated in the policy. Whether or not that list should be expanded, is perhaps something you would want to take up. Next slide. Pursuing officers' responsibilities. Officers must continually evaluate whether they should begin, continue, or terminate a pursuit involving these high speeds in these and other areas according to the policy. Next slide. Pursuit conclusion and tactics. This is what I quote the policy states in and of itself. Pursuits are inherently dangerous for officers and the public. In order to ensure public officer safety and public safety and help ensure an appropriate outcome, high-risk vehicle stop tactics is outlined by post guidelines, as I just went over, and taught by law enforcement academies and agency-specific training should be utilized at the end of most vehicle pursuits. Next slide. What does the policy say about terminating a pursuit? It says that officers involved in a pursuit have the responsibility to terminate the pursuit when the benefits of immediate apprehension are outweighed by the hazards of continuing the pursuit. Going back to the balancing equation. When the benefits are outweighed by the risk, the pursuit must be terminated by policy. Officers must continually evaluate whether the seriousness of the offense and the benefits of immediate apprehension are outweighed, balancing test, by the risk to pursuing officers and public safety and continuing the pursuit. So the judgment call, Commissioners, on behalf of officers and the department. Next slide. Factors in terminating the pursuit. This is what the policy says. It says that the officer should evaluate the seriousness of the offense for which the suspect is wanted. Vehicular or pedestrian traffic should be considered. Safety, volume, weather conditions, traffic conditions, roadway limitations, environmental conditions, time of day, and speed. All these are factors in when to terminate a pursuit. But those factors and that discretion and that judgment is left in the hands of police officers or those involved in pursuits. Another factor is whether or not the suspect is known to be a juvenile, a suspect whose identity is known and who can be caught or apprehended later, the availability of air support, results of ongoing evaluation of risk, the protection of the public, are all factors as to when a pursuit should be terminated. Next slide. Supervisors have responsibility. Under San Diego PD's policy, anytime there is a pursuit that is engaged, a supervisor must proceed to the vicinity of the pursuit without becoming actively involved. The supervisor must verify the speed of the pursuit. The supervisor must make a determination as to whether it is safe to continue the pursuit given the same factors that are used to initiate the pursuit. The supervisor has to evaluate changing factors, and all supervisors have the discretion and the power to terminate a pursuit when, going back to the balancing test, when the risk to the public and to others involved in the pursuit are outweigh the necessity to make an immediate apprehension. Next slide. San Diego PD includes the other required elements under Vehicle Code Section 17,004.7, including joint agency and interjurisdictional requirements, provision for air assistance, provision for shooting at vehicles. There is a provision in the policy that regulates whether or not officers may shoot at vehicles that are fleeing. The policy also covers tire deflation devices and other intervention measures, pursuit reporting and analysis requirements, and mandatory training requirements. Next slide, my final slide. The policy says that the in-service training division shall ensure that every sworn employee receives pursuit training annually. And the policy also states, quote, the training enables the department to maintain immunity from liability for civil damages due to the injury or death of any person or the damage of any property resulting from the collision of a vehicle being pursued by an officer of this agency. Officers also, under the policy, required to certify in writing they have received, read, and understood the department's vehicle pursuit policies. So, Commissioners, that is just a brief overview in terms of what these pursuit policies are, how they function, what the department's policy is. I'm not an expert in terms of the department's vehicle pursuit policy, only they're not here to speak. So I provided the overview as best I could. I'm here to answer any questions if you have, or I can answer them later.
Commissioner the second vice chair case.
The vehicle code says that if, I'm sorry about the feedback I'm getting. The vehicle code says that if a department promulgates this policy, they have civil immunity from liability. That's where the controversy comes in. Vehicle code section 17,004.7 is that statute.
Okay, thank you so much, outside counsel, Mr. Bennett. We're gonna put up a couple of chairs for our community members to come up. What we'd like you to do, once you come up, is introduce yourselves. If you have a story to tell, or if you're personally involved, if you have something to say, it doesn't matter. We just want to hear from the community on what you think of police policy, and if you think it should be changed, fixed. We're here to listen. So as they're adjusting the chairs and getting everyone in place, again, please state your name and what background you have to share. So thank you, and we will get you a mic as well. So hang on while we set this up so you're comfortable. You may start when you're ready. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tasha Williamson. I'm with Excelling in Justice, the president and founder. We support people who have had injustices happen to them by law enforcement. And unfortunately, we are here today with the family of Malachi and Mason Orozco Romero. His mother, Victoria Hayes, is sitting next to me. And Elizabeth is the driver and aunt who was driving the vehicle that day and trying to save both of the boys as well. So there's family behind us, aunts and uncles and cousins, young cousins that grew up with Malachi and Mason that are here. And this is only a fraction of the people who loved and supported Malachi and Mason and their family. There is 2 schools filled with children that are suffering and grieving the loss of their classmates. There are community members that are suffering and grieving alongside this family. No one as much as Victoria, who has lost all her children. So you imagine that you close your eyes one day, and when you open them, all of your children are gone, because that is her life and her journey from this point on, because of a police pursuit that should have ended. So I want to thank you for talking about the police pursuit. We know that law enforcement officers have immunity, but there is liability when you kill people. We hope that you will one day have more power to have oversight, complete oversight over law enforcement officers who continue to act recklessly. These were not the only victims. Before the gentleman got on the freeway, he struck another vehicle. They had enough time to end this pursuit. Another woman that we do not know has been injured, and she was the first vehicle that was struck before these officers struck Lizbeth's vehicle that killed Malachi and Mason. I want to also talk about the police pursuit 1.03. This is 3C. When engaged in a pursuit, officers must balance the seriousness of violators' suspected crime against the inherent risk of engaging in a pursuit, including potential for death or injury, and the potential for damage to personal or city property if the chase is conducted. Officers should not assume that all persons who flee from the police and refuse to yield are serious criminal suspects. Frequently, termination of a pursuit in the interest of safety is most appropriate. That resonates with us. That resonates with us. Because today, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old are not here. Because it didn't resonate with the specialized unit known as Special Operations Unit that has continued to act reckless in this community and others, and has continued pursuits that have reached high speeds beyond this day. Beyond this day, not even 5 days later, they had another police chase that they refused to end. This is what we're dealing with. We are dealing with a law enforcement department that has no responsibility to the public and the safety of others. No one from this law enforcement department has contacted this mother to even ask her if she needed anything, to send condolences to her. No one, except for one sergeant who had to come get a complaint after Special Operations Unit followed the uncle and aunt to the very home where the memorial was set up with giant pictures of these kids, where they acted the same as usual, pulling the uncle out of the car, violating his rights. Memorial, big as day, all caught on camera. This is what we deal with, and this is what this family has had to deal with. So we thank you all for the time to be able to speak. Victoria wants justice. She wants justice to be served because it feels as though this has been swept under the table. Every day she thinks about her children. It's hard for her to go to sleep. It's hard for her to think without thinking about her children. But the greater San Diego has forgotten them, it seems. They are lost somewhere because people have not stood up and shouted that this was an injustice. This was an injustice. They reported that speeds were 70 miles per hour, but when we got to court, you know what the DA said? The DA told this mom and her family speeds reached 100 miles per hour. She found out in court that they were going too fast. This was a dangerously high-speed chase, is what the DA said to this family. The police failed to follow protocol, and there should be discipline for killing 2 boys who have a long life to live. There should be discipline when you don't follow the procedures and protocols that your very chief signed. It is unbecoming a law enforcement officer to not follow your chief's standards. It is unacceptable. We have filed complaints, and we hope that through this investigation, you will find that if they did something wrong, that you sustain those findings. On December 8, 2023, a high-speed chase occurred. This chase could be heard on Broadcastify. 911 dispatcher reported officers were in pursuit coming into Southeastern on Imperial. The dispatcher then asked for anyone with spike strips on Southeastern frequency and noted that SOU were on Ocean View and 36. A sergeant came on the air asking to patch, which means to merge the Southeast frequency and the Special Operations Unit frequency. The dispatcher stated the SOU sergeant didn't want to patch unless someone had spikes. Seconds later, urgent cover was dispatched over the air. 94 East from the 15 freeway. Almost 10 minutes into this chase, Lisbeth's car was struck with the kids and Victoria trapped inside. Lisbeth tried very hard to get the kids out, screaming for help. I didn't think that Victoria was going to be here today because she's had countless surgeries. Countless. She just had surgery 5 days ago. So her presence here is tremendous for you all. She has been in pain, physically, and turmoil emotionally. So for her to have the strength to be here today is miraculous. If police had ended this pursuit and followed the SDPD procedures, her sons would be alive today. This tragedy has impacted hundreds of people, their family, friends, Porter Elementary, and Urban Village Pre-K, as I told you before. Malachi's friends, and I'll end, wrote Victoria, their mom, letters that they miss him and how he used to protect them from police. This is what they killed. They killed someone who could have been a leader. They killed someone who was a leader in his school. Please take this serious. Because you can't imagine what this mom is going through. You close your eyes and imagine your kids not being here. Every day she struggles to survive. Every day. She wants those officers held accountable. You are the only avenue to that because we know that SDPD will not. We hope that the court system will. But this has to be taken serious. They have to be serious about ending pursuits that are that high in speed, that are that dangerous to the public, or they will continue to have accidents like the one they had a few days ago, where the boys broke their legs and the officer almost killed himself. This is serious, thank you.
Can we hear from the mom?
She does not want to talk at this time.
Any family members would like to speak?
No. They've been advised not to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We extend our deepest condolences to the family of beautiful Malachi and Mason. We're so sorry. Thank you for being here. We will continue testimony. Again, please introduce yourself and let us know who you're with or what you're going to speak about. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Andrea St. Julian. As some of you may know, I was the principal author of the charter amendment that created this commission. So I have quite a background in what community members wanted and needed in this commission. It's very hard to speak after Tasha's really very moving statements. And I do want to emphasize the necessity for the officers involved to be held responsible for any failures they committed in failing to comply with the policy. And I want to add to that, because I don't want to see this ever happen to another family again. And while it is extremely important to look at wrongdoing in the past, it's just as important to look toward the future and make sure that there is a policy in place that can help prevent future incidents like this happening. In simply looking at the pursuit policy, there is a one-sentence purpose, and it says that the purpose of the pursuits procedure is, this department procedure establishes guidelines to enhance the effectiveness of a pursuit and reduce the likelihood of incidents that could lead to potential liability. The purpose of this pursuit policy says nothing about protecting the public. It says nothing about the health and safety of the community. It says that the purpose is to make sure the police are effective in pursuing people and making sure that they are not held liable. That should not be the purpose of this policy. And it is that purpose, that misaligned purpose, that keeps this policy from being what it really should be. One of the things that was really important to me when I sat down to write the proposed charter amendment is to make sure that the commission was looking into the future and preventing things, occurrences, negative occurrences. That's one of the reasons why you all have the ability to hire policy experts to help you consult and go through policies like this to decide what best practices are. I know you have not yet hired a permanent policy person, and that doesn't matter. You can hire consultants to help you rewrite any of these policies, and I would strongly urge you to find 1, 2, 3 of the very best policy experts on pursuits, hire them as consultants, and go through this policy with a fine-tooth comb to figure out what best practices are and how this policy can be changed so this never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Okay, I will. Got that right away. All right. My name is Yusef Miller. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition, the Saving Lives in Custody campaign, and I'm here to support the families who have lost 2 beautiful young kids in this excessive pursuit. These excessive pursuits cost the community's lives, and it's unnecessary. Not just unnecessary in the county, not only unnecessary in the state, nationally, it has been seen as unnecessary and costing the community too much. It costs us too much. We talked about the balance, the scale between public safety and the pursuit of a criminal. And it has been far outweighed by the pursuit vices the lives of people in our community. Public safety, it has been outweighed. Why is that? The people who are pursued by the most part are misdemeanors or citations. Just like this case that took the lives of these 2 young men. Misdemeanor cases, citation cases, costing lives. This is what we're seeing. And we have a policy that enables this kind of behavior. How does it enable it? Because there's immunity. When you have immunity, your responsibility goes down. Your actions are not controlled, it's not concise, it's not in a box. Immunity allows you to do nearly whatever you want, whatever you see fit. And we're finding that law enforcement is not taking the right approach to pursuits. Maybe we all watch too much TV. Maybe we all think that in the movies, people are supposed to be streaming down the roads and no one's in harm's way. There's no one on the street, and you can just catch the bad guy and everybody's happily ever after, but that's not the case for this family. That's not the case for these two young men. We will never see their full potential because they were cut short. 4 and 8. And this is from a high-speed pursuit. Low stakes, a citation. Driving without lights on and speeding, citation. Now we understand that when there's a felony, when someone was killed or raped or something like that, the stakes are higher. But those stakes do not outweigh public safety either. You can raise the bar, but you can't outweigh public safety. My family's out there right now. Your family's out there right now. Should we leave this meeting and see a loss of our loved ones? How would that feel? It's not recuperable. You can't recuperate from it. The mother, she will never be able to redeem her loved ones. It's irreversible. But the path was in our hands. I think the policy, instead of saying should or shall, it should say something stronger. Because the shall and shoulds, they kind of give it in the hands of the department, of the officer in pursuit. Well, we know, like a night like tonight, pursuits are different than when it's on dry ground. Pursuits are different, day versus night. Pursuits are different in all different kinds of events, environmental and road structures, neighborhoods and streets versus highways. We give too much leeway to individual choices, and we've seen individual choices cost us lives. Imbalance that is shown, where lives are not weighed as much as pursuits, is due to one main factor, in my opinion, and that factor is pursuit immunity. What will you do if you had no consequence for your actions? What would one do? Almost anything. Long as you can get to your main objective, long as you get to the ends, anything goes by any means necessary. But lives are not that way. An officer's career is redeemable. Their livelihood is redeemable. But these two gentlemen are not. We cannot get them back. This is irreversible. And you saw the mother sitting here in the wheelchair. She's gonna face this for the rest of her life. Every morning she wakes up, is this incident. Every night she goes to sleep, is this incident for the rest of her life. And no one's accountable? No one? No one? We need those experts on these policies. We need experts on this type of immunity, and all immunities, we need to really look at it. I don't wish that doctors have this kind of immunity, nurses have this kind of immunity, chefs have this kind of immunity. I don't wish that at all, because the consequences are too great. What about our law enforcement officers? People who are carrying bags and guns, people who have vehicles, motorcycle, cars, SUVs that are riding around on our streets. Immunity? We need to rethink. We need to revamp. We need to edit our policies and get those back to the public with public input and full transparency on what we're talking about on this issue. Every day there's a risk to my family and yours. We want to make a difference in the name of these children. Things have happened before these children, things have happened after these children. But here in San Diego County, we can use these two children as a rallying cry to make changes in this issue. I thank you for your time. My heart is filled with sorrow for this family, and we can do better when it comes to the making changes from this event.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next, next speaker will be Paloma Serna.
Thank you. My name is Paloma Serna. My daughter Elisa Serna died in police custody, and I'm part of the North County Equity and Justice Coalition. So high speed is dangerous on public streets, especially when chase is happening on the on and off ramp during 6 p.m. on a Friday night when it's traffic time. I don't think SDPD should be pursuing vehicle when when it is going 100 miles per hour, and officers cannot catch up, as heard from the officer in the call to the dispatch in this case. The moment that they saw the car is going to run, that is when they should have had stopped. It's time to start thinking of alternative solutions before anything escalates that leads to death, which results in 95% of the time. They are supposed to be trained for this and to protect and serve. These officers should not be granted immunity. They need to be held accountable with the suspect. The San Diego Police Department did not protect these boys. And also too, looking at one of the slides of the factors to consider for terminating pursuit. There was 8 of them. 2 of them were questionable to me because I am unaware, but in A, ongoing evaluation to the risk of the public, yes, there was. B, the protection of the public, yes, there was. C, vehicle or pedestrian or people traffic safety volume, yes, on a Friday night at 6. D, weather condition, yes, it looked like it was raining. E, traffic condition, of course. This is San Diego. F, speed, 100 miles per hour. G and H, I don't know that. So let's hold everyone who's accountable. I send my condolence to this family. I've also lost a daughter. I thank you for hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Burns.
Gina Burns, I also am with Michigan Moms Against Torture, and also with Saving Lives campaign. And with that, saving lives at any expense, I don't believe the officers should be exempt. In my opinion, they're criminals with badges, killing people out here in our communities. This shouldn't happen. Maybe if they were held accountable, things would change, right? You think? This has to stop. This is our community. The stats show the lives, the bodies piling up. Who wants to not talk about the elephant in the room? People are dying. Wrong is wrong. Saving lives at any expense, safety should always be a priority. In my opinion, like I said, they're criminals with badges and they need to be held accountable. Enough said.
I'm sorry, I had missed another point. I also would like to address that the police officers, they need to stop over policing the mental health, people with drug and alcohol addiction and homeless. These are people, desperate people, our loved ones. You know, nowadays it's everyone's child. It could be a brother, it could be a sister, a father, a mother. We're asking for help. We're not asking for them to be detained and killed later on down the line in custody. Thank you.
The mentally ill and the homeless need to be treated justly and receive mental health care at any expense. And they keep using that phrase, oh, of privacy. They don't want to say nothing. They have to follow privacy. But you know what? They are dying. They're dying out in the streets. They're dying in jail. And this is a shame.
Thank you. We're focusing on police pursuits right at this hearing. Thank you, though.
I know I spoke for a long time, but we asked for the names of the officers because the family wanted the names of the officers. And San Diego PD has continued to withhold those names. We believe that when 2 children die from any type of police activity, that the names of the officers should be known to the family who lost everything. So I'm not sure if you have it within your means, but this family should know each name of the officers involved in the loss of Malachi and Mason Orozco Romero. Thank you.
concludes public testimony.
Thank you to all the members of the public who came to speak. Now, I would like to hear from the commissioners and see if we have any questions for the community amongst ourselves. Is there anyone who would like to start? Commissioner Justice.
So I too would like to express my condolences to the families and the relatives. I can't fathom something like this happening to my family, and I can just imagine what they're going through. So my sincere condolences to the family members.
Anyone else want to discuss the policy, pursuit policy, any insight? Anyone want to share anything? Commissioner Justice.
So I'm in the auto repair business, and with technology that's available today, especially on the newer vehicles, we can do a lot of things remotely and wirelessly. We can upgrade the vehicle's computers while the car is sitting in the person's driveway. We can also unlock a vehicle remotely. Another thing we can do is disable a vehicle while it's running. So I would think that police department might want to consider using this type of technology to disable a vehicle rather than continue high-speed pursuits.
Thank you, Commissioner Justice. Commissioner Rubio.
Can we talk at some point in the future about hiring policy experts to review this?
We can discuss that right now, and we're not going to vote, but absolutely we should discuss it. I second your idea, so go ahead.
So what would we need to do to hire policy experts?
We could put it on the agenda for next meeting. We can take a vote on hiring that. We may have a budget. We'll discuss that with our interim executive director, who can go, policy experts who can go through the policy, recommend potential changes. They would have to come back to the commission. We would have to vote on it because it is our decision as a commission. And then we would have them write up recommendations that I would sign as the chair, and we would present them to the police chief, and we would share them with the community as well. So that would be the process. What's the feeling on hiring outside experts? Commissioner Mollett, oh, just a yes. Do you have, go ahead. I think we need a lot more information. The other thing I'm wondering about is like strategizing or something for, because we can hire experts and recommend revised policy and then nothing happens with it, right? So like the political part of it all, I don't know how to approach that. I mean, this is really high stakes. So I think it would be great if we could find a way to come at it from both sides. Commissioner Flores.
So I'm just curious to know if we have data about this type of policy throughout the US. Is there anything that we can take and learn from a different city that we may be able to implement here? And where is that data? Do we have a means of organizing that and finding trends in that data that will allow us to make a better informed decision? Because this isn't the only issue this isn't just a San Diego issue. This is a world issue even. I'm sure even Japan, I think, has a policy where they have paintball guns that, they use when they don't want to pursue someone in times of in times of traffic. That's something I just looked up yesterday. And I think that research is really impactful. And the data will allow us to really use these policy advisors to the benefit of the city.
And that's something I believe that the policy experts can research and look into until we have staff. So we can hire outside, that's exactly what they can look at and show data that, as Commissioner Malnat said, would support the change. So not, it's going to be, if change, we are going to make it well thought out and have it backed up by data. So that's why we're not just going to make a decision tonight, right? It's going to be well thought out, well decided, and then discussed again. So that's exactly what outside investigators can look at. Now, Second Vice Chair Chase, and then Commissioner Root.
Second Vice Chair Case.
Yes, I know.
Looking at the policy, we're talking about data here. The policy requires that whenever there is a pursuit, that there be a pursuit report filed both with the California Highway Patrol, but also locally. And it also requires that the supervisor fill out a form. It says the pursuing officer, the immediate supervisor shall complete the CHP pursuit data sheet and include a brief synopsis of the event and factual evaluation concerning the compliance with the department's policy. So I think that since that data is, those reports are required, that the commission in analyzing the situation should utilize its ability under the charter to request that data from the department so we can get over a period of time all of those pursuit data sheets, as well as the immediate supervisor's evaluation with compliance, and that may help us with determining the appropriate way to pursue.
Excellent suggestion. Second Vice Chair Case.
What is,
Commissioner Rubio.
thank you. What is the name of the document that you just referred to?
We look at the policy, last page, or last page 13 of the policy pursuit reporting and analysis requirements under A. It's the CHP pursuit report, as well as SDPD has a pursuit data sheet, and then the supervisor has to complete a I guess the same sheet, but theirs also has to include an analysis of whether or not the officers were in compliance.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make sure, is it, so we tabled it, right? We tabled to talk about like potentially like what it would look like to hire experts?
Yes, we're not voting on anything tonight.
We tabled it for
Tonight
next
was an
meeting, right?
information session,
Okay.
but we will put it on the agenda as far as hiring at our next March 20th meeting. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that
Thank
we
you.
put it on there. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Rodriguez and then Commissioner Kansen.
So if I understand correctly, in order to be immune from liability, they need to have a written doc policy, which is what we're looking at, the SDPD 103. And they have to have regular and periodic training. So what do we know what this training entails of? It's a 15-page policy. So it's this, they mentioned regular and periodic training. It's regular initial, it's periodic training 30 minutes. I would like to kind of have an idea on what it is that they're training on. And most importantly, when things like this happen, are they having some sort of safety stand down to put a stop and talk about it? Are those answers we can get from SDPD?
We can check with internal affairs when we meet with them. I don't know if we're going to get an answer, but we can definitely ask. And Chief Investigator Golub keeps a list of what we're going to ask IA when we meet with them. So thank you. Commissioner Kansen.
I feel like, knowing the outcomes of these police pursuits, they should be outdated, or they should not be a way to apprehend suspects, because I feel like safety goes out the window once high speed and once the focus is on just apprehending somebody. And just knowing that these 2 lives were lost, so many other lives are being lost. I just feel like that shouldn't be a way to apprehend people because of the high speeds and the safety risks of people's lives.
Thank you, Commissioner Campson. Anyone else? Okay. Commissioner Honore? No, okay. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so our next steps will be, actually, Mr. Bennett had a comment.
Yeah, Commissioners, in terms of the policy analyst and executive director can speak to it, it's not something that will happen overnight. The city has an RFP process, they have a sole source process that may afford you an ability to do that, but it's a process. Just like a lot of things in the city just take some time. And so just keep that in mind. The post-pursuit analysis and the reporting procedure is something that the commission should be able to access and should be able to get, by requesting it from the department. In terms of Commissioner, in terms of what the training is that is received, that should be something that the commission can get. In terms of what that training consists of, whether it's a video training or whether it's on, some hands-on training, I don't know why that would be secretive. I mean, it should be available and accessible to the commission, and that's something you can get. And you can also try to start ascertaining or getting as much information as you can relative to the department in terms of all these post-pursuit reports, to the extent that the department will give them to you, as well as training and collecting information so you can do your own process while you seek assistance from a policy analyst, et cetera, as well as the other thing, commissioners, in terms of collecting pursuit policies from other jurisdictions to see what the trends are, as you said, Commissioner, I don't see why that's something that you could not start doing right away with or without a policy analyst also.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Commissioner Honore?
Yes, Madam Chair, at the beginning of this presentation, you put up a slide or two that had some stark and startling statistics on it. Is that, I know it will show up in the video record, but can you make sure that is documented in the documentary record? The statistic that showed that African Americans are 400% more likely to be killed in a pursuit, and there's more than 3,000 people die every year from police pursuits. Can we make sure that that's part of the written record as well as the video record?
Yes, since those were part of the opening record statements, they will be in the minutes. So thank you, Commissioner Honore. Anyone else? Okay, Commissioner Flores.
I'm just curious, does the policy change at all based off of our border region and how close we are, the proximity? Like, working with the Border Patrol, for example, do they take that pursuits off? Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out if San Diego County, if that area has any different protocols, and if we can figure out if when those chases start in that area, does that affect how the police react to them and how they cooperate with each other? I'm just trying to figure out if there is data that coincides with the policies on both ends, because Border Patrol does have a piece to play within the pursuits and how we go about that in the city.
If you look at the data, particularly from various municipalities, each municipality has a different standard. Some municipalities will pursue only felony cases, shootings, robberies, etc. They will pursue a vehicle. Others will pursue traffic stops, lights out, broken tail lights, etc. the border, I mean, and there is communication between various municipalities on a pursuit, because likely somebody going down the 8 freeway is going to hit a number of different municipalities. And then the Highway Patrol also has their own pursuit policy. So there's nothing consistent and universal in these policies. What we may in time find is that there should be a standard for high-speed pursuits. And that standard should be consistent, we would hope, on a national scale. It's not likely to happen because every municipality likes to make their own rules. But to answer your question, there are differences everywhere.
Can I follow up? Also, Commissioner, again, one of the requirements in these pursuit policies is that there be a provision for interjurisdictional pursuits. So there has to be coordination. There's supposed to be coordination throughout the county as pursuits traverse into different jurisdictions, including down at the border. So there should be provision for that in communication, but the procedures, as Commissioner said, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction can vary and be different, quite different.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. So our next steps, we can put on the agenda for next meeting, which is March 20th. We can discuss hiring. As Mr. Bennett said, if you have not dealt with this city bureaucracy, it's a little on the frustrating side. So as much as we want to do things quickly, however, there are steps that we can take that we can discuss next time as far as how we can research, as you brought up, Commissioner Flores, and then also hire so we can get someone to look at, so we can get a policy expert to look at through, who may notice things that we as volunteers and community members may not notice. So that's the next step we'll take with that. And then as far as we will continue on this process, and the goal will be I can't give you a time frame at this point, but to come up with recommendations that we will share with the chief of police. He has the final say on whether changes will be made. He or she, when there's a new police chief in June, and we will not let this topic fade away. And yes, Dr. Scarborough.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that we have influence at the City Council Public Safety Committee. You have had meetings with individual council members and the mayor. That one of the recommendations was, what are the political strategies that you could use as well? And there you have arrows in your quiver. And I just wanted to expand our thinking about the ways to pursue policy change.
And that's why we're so lucky to have her as our executive director. We do go before the Public Safety Committee on March 20th before the CPP meeting. So that will be something that we will definitely bring up as well. So if there's no further comments or no further discussion, I just wanted the Commissioner on Police Practices thanks all community members who came to share their testimony tonight. And we also thank Mr. Bennett for his wonderful presentation. We extend our deepest condolences to the family of Malachi and Mason Orozco Romero. We do not want to forget them in all this. From here, the commission will complete more research as we discussed. And also future community hearings for this year, 2024, will focus on pretext stops, Fourth Amendment waivers, the Special Operations Unit, and de-escalation tactics and policies. We will hold community hearings on all of those topics before the end of the year. That's already been voted and in our minutes. We will publicize these upcoming hearings and hope that the community comes out and shares their stories with us to possibly affect change. Our number one goal as a Commissioner of Police Practices is to increase community safety and also safety of police officers. We want safety across the board. So thank you again for coming. This adjourns tonight's community hearing. Thank you.